Good day, colleagues. My name is Ayanda Deliwe, and I am from Nelson Mandela University. I am a lecturer at the university in South Africa. The paper that I'm presenting is work that was done by myself, together with two of my colleagues, Dr. Beck and Professor Smith. The title of our paper is on perceptions of food retailers regarding climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. This is the overview of the paper. These are all the topics which I will be covering in this paper. I want to start off with posing a question to everyone, and that is, climate is changing. Why aren't you? So I want you to think about this as I go through the presentation. Greenhouse gas emissions and its associated effects have been a debate in literature for many years. Climate change is seen as a yearly change within the Earth's atmosphere that is a result of change in atmosphere as well as interactions between the atmosphere and other chemical, geologic, geographic, and biological factors within the Earth's system. Climate change has primarily caused a warming effect of the Earth's atmosphere that has affected all aspects of life. Greenhouse gas emissions are essentially gases that are caused by humans and contribute significantly to the effect of global climate change. The food chain produces greenhouse gas emissions at all stages in the life cycle, from farming process and its input through to manufacturing, distribution, refrigerating, retailing, and food preparation in the home of waste disposal. So it's important to note that when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, it is transmitted during all the stages in the life cycle. Even though there are technological improvements that are in place, they are not sufficient in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. In developing countries, it is assumed that energy consumption is more than developed countries, as there is lack of modern technology implementation within these regions and thus relying on outdated technology that contributes more to the carbon footprints. And in addition, there are other operational activities such as packaging, refrigerating, lighting, and machinery, which are used among others, and all these contribute to the carbon footprint. The research problem that was investigated is climate change is one of the key factors that had increased impact on food production and food supply. Climate change is also a major threat to worldwide food security due to a few aspects, namely the impact on crop productivity, high cost adaptation of climate change, water and supply and demand. It is increasingly acknowledged that food, notably in production and consumption, is making a significant contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions. There are various studies which have argued that food and drink transportation and construction industry sectors are regarded as the most significant contributors of greenhouse gas emission. In South Africa, there has been some literature, or rather there has been some structures which have been put in place in form of policies and regulations in order to combat the greenhouse gas emissions. But just having these policies and regulations is not enough. It is important to make sure that the whole value chain works in unity in order for these policies and regulations to be implemented accordingly. Greenhouse gas emissions contribute significantly to the effect of global climate change. The food retailers are contributing to greenhouse gas emissions by means of electricity usage through refrigerator equipment, lighting, heating, air conditioning, baking, and other secondary services. And currently, there is no general strategy for food retailers to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and there has been minimal research that has been done in the food retailer sector. Hence, the reason why we are investigating this problem. There are three objectives that were covered in the study. Firstly, we wanted to conduct a literature review regarding greenhouse gas emission strategies and climate change. Secondly, we wanted to empirically assess the greenhouse gas emission strategies of food retailers in the Nelson Mandela Bay. Nelson Mandela Bay is a region in South Africa. Thirdly, we wanted to assist organizations in formulating general guidelines to reduce greenhouse gas emissions of food retailers. Just to give some clarification of key concepts, there are concepts which I am going to be using throughout the presentation. So I felt it's important that I explain exactly what I mean by each of these concepts to make sure that we are all on the same page when I refer to these concepts. The first one is climate change. That is global warming, which refers only to the Earth's rising surface temperature, while climate change includes warming and the side effects of warming. Greenhouse gas emissions is gases that are caused by human activities and contribute significantly to the effect of global climate change. These human activities include the use of fossil fuels in heating, electricity generation, transportation, and industrial processes. And when I talk about food retailers, I'm referring to the retailers who are selling food on or off their premises, including the restaurants as well as the fast food businesses. Just to give some history on the greenhouse gas emission and climate change, there is a clear connection between climate change and greenhouse gas emissions being emitted into the atmosphere. The more greenhouse gas emission the Earth sends into the atmosphere caused by the greenhouse gas effects, the less energy can escape into space and the Earth will become warmer over time. There are three main international systems in place which are there to reduce the effects of climate change, and these are namely the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change, the UNFCCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, and the Kyoto Protocol. In 1988, the IPCC was created by the United Nations Environment Programme and the World Meteorological Organization. And in 1999, the first report was issued that it revealed the views of 400 scientists, and they identified that climate change was a reality and insisted that something needed to be done about climate change because of it being a reality. Then the findings by the 400 scientists encouraged government all over the world to create the UNFCCC, which started on the 21st of March in 1994 and are supported by 199 countries worldwide. The ultimate goal of this framework is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to such a level where there will be no further harm done in Earth or human in future. The main focus is placed on countries who are more industrial oriented since they contribute the most to the current and past greenhouse gas emissions. Then we have the Kyoto Protocol, which is the worldwide agreement that builds on the UNFCCC, and it came into force in 1988. There's a total of 172 countries that started to act and signed the Kyoto Protocol and sets legal binding goals and schedules by reducing greenhouse gas emissions in their countries. There are a number of factors that influence greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. The factors such as the variations in solar radiation, changes in the orbital parameters of the Earth, changes in galactic cosmic rays, geographical and geological and human activity are among the main factors that have contributed to the current situation. Also, human activities such as extraction and use of oil, coal, and gas have discharged massive amounts of carbon dioxide emissions within Earth's atmosphere and have resulted in an increase in atmospheric temperatures. It should also be noted that there are various greenhouse gas emissions that have various impacts to social, environmental, and economic life, and these emissions vary in terms of impact and importance within each sector of the value chain. The factors that I'm going to be referring to the most in this presentation is the factors identified in literature being the factors that contribute the most to greenhouse gas emissions in the food retailer. And these factors include air conditioning, lighting, baking, heat ventilation, food wastage, as well as refrigerating. When it comes to the methodology that was used, this study adopted the quantitative research approach to assess greenhouse gas emissions. And there are two main research methods that we identified, the positivist methodology as well as the exploratory research. With exploratory research, we used to simplify indefinite situations to realize concepts that may be opportunities for the business, since it is a relatively new area of research and not conducted in this region. Then the descriptive research defines features of objects, people, groups, organizations, or environments, and attempts to explain a given situation, describing perceptions regarding greenhouse gas emissions, strategies of food retailers in the Nelson Mandela Bay region. When it comes to the population and the sample, the population selected for the study was limited to the food retailers, including restaurants in the Nelson Mandela Bay region. Specifically, convenience and judgmental sampling was used. This sampling method was chosen as it was best suited for the assessment of specific subsets of respondents, and it is less time consuming. So the sample size was restricted to a minimum, or rather a maximum, of 120 selected respondents in the food retail sector within the Nelson Mandela region. The data, how it was collected, we used secondary data collection where we reviewed the literature, as well as primary data collection where we sent out self-administered structured questionnaire to the respondents. There were a total of 150 questionnaires which were distributed, and we only received responses from 120 respondents, and that gave us an effective response rate, which is 80%. How the questionnaire was designed, we had 4 sections, section A to D. In section A, we investigated the general perceptions regarding climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. We used a 5-point ordinal Likert scale. In section B, we attempted to identify perceptions regarding suitability using the 5-point ordinal Likert scale. In section C, we explored perceptions regarding operational factors influencing greenhouse gas emissions. And in the last section, section D, we assessed the biographical data of respondents using the nominal scale. Now, the results and our findings. In terms of the demographical profile of the respondents, there was an equal distribution of respondents in terms of the position in their organization. 37% was the employees, 36% was the managers, and 27% was the owners. And then it shows that most respondents have been employed within their current employer between the ages of 1 and 5 years, as it amounted for 41%, and 23% were employed between the years of 6 and 10 years. And most organizations are regarded as small, having an employment size of less than 51 people, which was 74%, and the medium-sized organization amounted for 23%. And the majority of organizations of which respondents belongs to have been in existence between 1 and 5 years, as it amounted for 29%, and those organizations that have been in existence between 6 and 10 years were 24%. And the majority of the respondents are employed in sole traders, and that is 38%, and partnerships amounted for 35%. There was an even distribution in terms of the respondents that belongs to food retailers, fast food, as well as restaurants. Now, when it comes to the descriptive statistics, perceptions regarding climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, and sustainability, we looked at a number of aspects. There were three aspects that we looked at, and that was economical aspect, social aspects, as well as environmental aspects. And from all these three aspects, the participants were neutral when it comes to these three aspects. So meaning that when it comes to climate change and greenhouse gas emissions aspects, these are not really implemented in the organizations that had participated in the study. And when it comes to descriptive statistics on operational factors impacting greenhouse gas emissions, we tested the greenhouse gas emissions factors that were listed in literature, which was refrigeration, air conditioning, lighting, baking, heating, and waste. And from that, we found that the factors that impact on greenhouse gas emissions in the food retailers the most was refrigerating, lighting, as well as baking, as they amounted, they had the highest percentage. Then when it comes to the internal reliability, Cronbot Alpha, of the instruments, we tested the instrument using Cronbot Alpha for sections A to C, which was in the questionnaire. We find that our testing measurement tool was actually reliable because the Cronbot Alpha, for most of it, was above 0.5 and also above 0.7. So our measuring instrument was reliable. In conclusion, the concept of greenhouse gases and its associated effects are essential concepts for developing and understanding climate change throughout the world. On the business level, climate change has resulted in a business having to change the way they operate their business and develop and execute strategies which are going to assist them in minimizing the greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of addressing the issue, there are a number of international organizations which were found in literature which will assist in minimizing the problem of greenhouse gas emissions. The fight against climate change is real, and measures to slow this epidemic are necessary. The main measures that slow climate change include reducing greenhouse gas emissions and expansion of forests, changing lifestyles, and the establishment of regulations and laws to enforce change. It's important to remember that we must not only establish these regulations and laws, we must make sure that they are enforced. It is essential that all participants at all levels, government, citizens, and businesses, act in unity to reduce the impact of climate change. So this is not only the business, the issue of food retailers. It is everyone's responsibility to make sure that they do their part in making sure that greenhouse gas emissions is reduced. The food sector in particular is vulnerable and contributes significantly to the negative effects of climate change. So they need to make sure that they look at the whole value chain. Food retailers' actions to reduce emissions should include reducing electricity consumption, minimizing waste and packaging, designing buildings and choosing locations efficiently, operating fleet vehicles efficiently, recycling, using less harmful gases, and refrigeration system. It was established that the food retailers should consider operational factors such as baking, heating, lighting, and energy usage, and air conditioning and refrigerating when reducing greenhouse gas emissions. There are some managerial implications and recommendations which were put forward, and these are based on the general perceptions regarding greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. So it's important that we realize the impact of greenhouse gas emissions. We become mindful of the possible effects of global climate change. We become concerned about water scarcity, rising water levels, and lost land. We become aware of everyday business activities and how they contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. We realize that greenhouse gas emissions will have an influence on the business in the long run, and that we realize that competitiveness in the food sector will require climate change friendly technologies and operations, as well as we view greenhouse gas emissions a reduction as a priority. We must have strategies in place which are going to assist us to reduce the amount of carbon tax. We believe that by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, the South African economy is going to grow. And we also believe that by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, the food value chain and will become more profitable. We need to educate consumers on how to manage food wastage through various initiatives, create an image of doing good for greater community. We need to encourage customers to buy organic food products and believe that greenhouse gas emissions emitted is a direct cause of climate change, and we must have strategies in place to combat environmental issues. Additionally, we also came up with general guidelines and recommendations regarding the impact of operational factors on greenhouse gas emissions and change in the food retail sectors. In conclusion, I would like to add with the quote, "We will pay for this climate change one way or the other. We will pay to reduce greenhouse gas emissions today, and we will have to take enormous hits of some kind, or we will pay the price in military terms, and that will involve human lives. There will be a human toll. There is no way out of this that does not have real costs attached to it." This is a quote by Anthony Zinni. And what I like about this quote is it is emphasizing on the importance of making sure that we pay for the greenhouse gas emissions now by investing in programs that are going to assist us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Or if we fail to do it now, we need to know that we are going to pay later. And when we pay later, the price is going to be very high, as it is going to be human lives. I thank you.